This woman once asked me, what does your wife do? I said, oh, my wife runs a home for unwanted children. She said, oh. I said, actually, they're our children. And nobody else wants them. So she's raising them. She says, oh. So she's doing nothing. What? If she takes in a stray child, a homeless child, she's a hero. If she doesn't let her children become homeless, she's doing nothing. What is that? It's ridiculous.
Let's talk about the invention of gender. Why two?
Well, what exactly does it mean to be a giver or to be a receiver? A giver can't receive and a receiver can't give. What does it mean? This person is a giver. So you can say, this person is best able to give better than the receiver because the receiver is better at receiving. So yeah, they can both receive and give, but the man is a little better at giving and the woman is a little better at receiving. Okay. It's not really a definition. It's a sliding scale. Who's better at it? And that's where most people get very confused. It's as if gender is not a definition. It's an activity. You can be good at it, you're not so good at it. So what then makes a giver and a receiver? There's a certain ultimate satisfaction of being who you are and doing what you're meant to do. A man is a giver because unless he is successful in giving, he doesn't feel like his existence is justified, even if he is good at receiving. And a woman who doesn't feel like she successfully received is not going to feel complete or satisfied, even if she's a great giver. So basically, it's not negotiable.
You shouldn't want you were meant to be the most natural thing to do. But we are facing a world, we are waking up in a world where it's the least natural thing. Let's say you take a woman who is incredibly empowered, influential. She has so many. She's a teacher. She's a leader. She's a manager. And then you'll tell her, no, you're actually meant to be a receiver, and you're using all your energy as a giver. She will have to go against her nature, seeming nature, but she will have to do lots of work. So what you're meant to be, you're also meant to work on, or if you're meant to be, it should be an automatic expression of who you are.
It is who you're meant to be, and therefore it is natural. So when you do it, you're being natural. But nature can get distracted, can get sidetracked, can get blocked. So it's not like we have to develop this nature. We just have to get past the obstructions to our nature. And this is true in so many different things. You know, a mother who gives birth and has no feelings for her children. That's her nature? No, that's not her nature. So what happened? This is a messed up world in which what should be isn't always what is. So sometimes you have to go back to your nature. And isn't that what most people go searching for? I'm going to find myself. Well, if it's yourself, why is it lost? Where did you misplace it? But that's true. So it's not that it's not natural. And so when you do find it, it comes natural. But you have to find it because there's so much noise and there's so much distraction that you could get confused.
I think a lot of women who will be exposed to the reality that their purpose or they're meant to be a receiver, will see it as a reducing down of who they are and of their talents, because we're talking about a generation that it's not like she went to university and discovered feminism. She grew up, she was born into a whole other what she got from her mother, from her father, from her school is completely different. So now she's 25, she's 30, and now she has to be a receiver and not feel like she's reducing or diminishing anything from herself.
So what's the solution? Firstly, make sure you have definitions. Anybody who knows what a receiver is doesn't feel put down at all, because it's a very powerful, a very awesome, noble thing. But I'm working on the assumption that feminism has turned out to be a big disappointment, and that we don't have to convince women that being women is okay. I think those days are gone, where it's not okay to just be a woman. You got to be a little like a man too. No, I think those days are gone. I hope they're gone.
Why does supporting someone or receiving his or nurturing his growth, how is it better than nurturing my own growth?
Nurturing your own growth is not really called nurturing. It's called narcissism, self-indulgence, pettiness. Nurturing always means nurturing someone else, like a mother nurtures a baby. That's the real nurturing. And in order to be a real nurturer, you have to be free of self-interest and conflicts and issues. As long as you're busy at working with yourself, you're not available to nurture. A nurturer is, by definition, completely available. And that's why men are not good nurturers. Because men do have to produce something, accomplish something, achieve something, before they feel like a mensch. And that doesn't let them be a good nurturer. Until they get older, they retire, they become a Zaidi, and all of a sudden they're good nurturers. Because the war is over, now I can nurture. So being the source of life is not as important and noble as fixing a life that got broken. So sure, the drama, the headlines, if you save someone who was near death, wow, you're such a hero. But if you keep people from getting to where they're near death, you didn't do anything. That's so silly.
Do you agree there's a certain sacrifice to this role?
What sacrifice? This woman once asked me, what does your wife do? I said, my wife runs a home for unwanted children. She said, oh. I said, actually, they're our children. And nobody else wants them. So she's raising them. She says, oh. So she's doing nothing. What? If she takes in a stray child, a homeless child, she's a hero. If she doesn't let her children become homeless, she's doing nothing. What is that? It's ridiculous.
Today, women who are exposed to those ideas, as you say, they were disillusioned feminism. They do discover spirituality, and they want to, okay, let's do this. Want to be Mikabel. But then they face either an existing partner or in the search of a partner, as a reality where the mashpia is not there.
So what does a woman do who wants to be a receiver, but her husband is not a giver?
Exactly.
Well, in the dance between the giver and the receiver, where does the activity, where does the relationship begin? With the giver or with the receiver? You can argue both ways. If the husband is a real giver, then the wife will be a better receiver. And if the wife is a really great receiver, then the husband will be a better giver. Like with a student and a teacher. If you have a good student, all of a sudden you're a smart teacher. If you have a great teacher, all of a sudden you become a good student. So it works both ways, but what's the main power behind this is the feminine. The openness, the welcome that a receiver gives is irresistible to the giver. So when the woman is truly receptive to her husband, he will become a giver even if he hasn't been. Now, shouldn't get married that way. Shouldn't get married thinking he'll become a giver. No, he's got to feel like a giver to begin with. But what if you're married and after a while he shifts positions and suddenly he doesn't want to be a giver. He's lazy, he's turned off, he's discouraged.
Or he doesn't have anything to give.
Or he never had? Oh,
Yeah.
that's a disaster. That would be a disaster. We're assuming that every man can be a giver, but not every man is going to be a giver if he's been discouraged.
So when you say a giver, you don't necessarily mean...
A genius?
I was going to ask a giver of spirituality, of Torah.
No. No.
It's not a requirement. It's not the main channel of giving.
No, because then he's her rabbi. I don't want that. A giver means he gives himself, not something. And a receiver means received into herself, not into her house. So it's much more personal, much more internal. Now, what is the person who is giving himself? What will be the vehicle for it?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean he gives himself? He just follows her around like a puppy dog? He's going to give himself in some medium. So he'll give himself in teaching, he'll give himself in providing money, or bringing home the bread. He'll provide himself by being entertaining, by being attentive. But it's the self that counts. So there are people who are very gentlemanly and very proper, and they'll do all the right things, but they're not giving themselves. Then there's frustration all around. Then there are people who don't have much to offer in terms of things, but they're really, their entire self is devoted. And that feels right.
So a couple should discover the vehicle through which the giving and receiving can be expressed.
Yeah. I remember an advertisement for a perfume long time ago. I don't expect anybody else to remember. But they were advertising this perfume. And the ad said, want him to be more of a man? Be more of a woman. That's so true. If you want to bring out the giver, be a better receiver. If you want to bring out the receiver, be a better giver.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's so workable. Because otherwise you think, hey, why are you not a better receiver? Go get your act together. Go. No. It's not something you can dismiss or step away from. If she's not being receptive, you got to be more of a giver. You can't just send her to go fix it. It's so impersonal. So the power of receptivity is what moves the world. Now, even in nature abhors a vacuum. Where there is a vacuum, something will come running to fill it. It's so powerful. Being receptive means like a vacuum. It draws, it pulls, it's irresistible. So the more receptive, the more irresistible. And that brings out the giver in the man. Even God is moved and inspired when we really want to be His.
In the teaching of Hasidus, it feels like there's a very strong saturation, absorbance of Hasidus in the female side, and the hunger for this influence to be given from the male side. But actually, apart from the rabbi at home, it's missing. And then there's tension because the woman doesn't want to become an influencer in the aspect of godliness and spirituality, but she does want that presence of godliness in the home. What is the importance of this element, and how should it be channeled through those gaps? Why are there gaps like this as well?
If the woman is ahead of the man in learning and observance and godliness, does she have to become his giver, his mentor, his rabbi, his policeman? No, she has to become more feminine, because the feminine brings out all the talents and potential in the man. So she has to not give him learning and devotion. She has to elicit it from him.
Okay.
That's subtle. That's more like the moon than the sun. The sun is not subtle. It hits you in the eye and it's like, can't ignore it, and that's it. The moon says, so what do you think? It's more romantic. Of course, the moon is much more romantic. But if she has to lecture him, everything falls apart. Because now they're reversing roles. He resents being lectured. She resents the fact that she has to lecture. Like so many times women are upset, why do I have to tell you? Why do I have to ask? It bothers them. Why didn't you know that I was afraid, or do I have to tell you? Now, what's wrong with that? Good communication. Develop communication skills. No, if I have to tell you, then you're making me the mashpia. I don't want to be the mashpia.
She doesn't want to. Right. But she also doesn't want to dumb herself down. It's another risk. If I already know, you don't even know there's a God, you didn't even go to Torah lesson, but now I have to ask you, what do you think?
Yeah. That's a dangerous idea. In Jewish life, women were never dumb. It never was. Yeah, women were not well read. That's true. They didn't read books, they didn't read the Gemara, so they weren't well read. That makes them dumb? That's a terrible thing to say. In fact, the sages advised each other, if you are in a quandary and you can't decide which way to go, ask your wife. Why? Because she's dumb? No, because she sees things more clearly, more earthy, more real. So if a sage is confused, it's because he knows too much. All that information is not coming together into a sensible conclusion. So ask your wife, she'll straighten you out. So there was never a thought, a belief, an attitude that women are dumb. Never. You say that about my mother? Oh, you're in trouble.
What's the rationale behind the ban on teaching women Torah?
Precisely because it can be confusing and not lead to a practical, earthy conclusion. In fact, there are men who can't tolerate it. Just tell me. Don't give me the arguments and the counter-argument. What was the conclusion? So what do I need to know? Well, this rabbi says like this, and that rabbi says like that. Why are you doing this to me?
So it's not that she shouldn't have the knowledge, it's that she doesn't need necessarily the process.
It's a different kind of knowledge. It's like a more intuitive knowledge, reaching the conclusion, not getting stuck in the pilpul. So it's the anchor, intellectually. You ever say the woman is the foundation of her home? Yeah, in every way. The foundation of his intelligence. What gives his intelligence a solid hold in reality? His wife.
Should a man be a receiver in order to be a giver?
Before you can be a giver, you have to be a receiver. And that's why you have to be a good student. Because that's where you get to experience being a receiver. If you've never experienced it, you won't appreciate it in your wife.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember the day that I discovered being a receiver. Because this one teacher was just like such a magnificent giver. All we could do was just melt and receive everything he said. And it was magic.
So it wasn't hard work?
Not at all. In fact, we became such good receivers that the teacher was inspired and said, I'm going to graduate you early and come learn with me at the other yeshiva.
I'm guessing who that is.
Yeah. So a good student brings out something in a teacher, even in a great teacher.
How do you imagine the ideal world of male and female? How does it look at the end of the road? God, male, female.
When it works, what is the result? Mm-hmm. The result is a home. When you have a male being male and a female being female, you created a home. And a home means the place where you know you belong. Not just welcome. This is where you belong. Our biggest frustration, I think, psychologically, emotionally, our biggest frustration is, where do I belong? And that's why the trauma of being orphaned, or the trauma of being lost or displaced, or where do I belong? We understand and appreciate this more than most people because we are the wandering Jews. Where do we belong? This country, no. That country, no. Even when we come to Israel, we say, no, you don't belong here. So where do we belong? And it's not enough to say, well, you can live in Birobijan. I don't want a place to live. I want to go where I belong. Home. That is such a powerful, necessary part of life. If you never feel at home, you're not healthy. You're not real. You're miserable. So what creates that I'm home? The merging of male and female, giver and receiver, that creates a home. In a home, children might benefit and grow from it and be blessed by it. So it's very appropriate that a giver and a receiver who created a home should fill that home with children. Where else? Where else will children thrive if not in their home? But many people complain that they don't live in a home, they live in a house. That's bad. That is painful.
Is this mission something that God needs from us?
Absolutely.
And how come? What does this give him in his purpose and in the bigger picture?
Well, we know that God created the world particularly in order to have a home, a place he belongs. He's everywhere, obviously. He fills all the heavens and all the earth. Where does he belong? If we are in a healthy relationship with God, and he is our giver and we are the receiver, then the world we live in becomes a home instead of a place. Yaakov went to sleep on the road, and he dreamt, and there was a ladder standing on earth, reaching into heaven, and he woke up and he said, wow, this is the house of God. This is where God belongs. Why are we not participating in this? So, getting married is a miniature copy of God creating the world, of God creating his home. So a bunch of little homes eventually merge into one big home for God and his people.
And a bunch of little souls merge into
to fill the home.
One huge soul that is God's other half.
Right. So the question people ask, God practices what he preaches, right? So God said no polygamy today. So why does he have so many wives? Mm-hmm. It's polygamy. So you could say, well, the ban on polygamy is because two wives don't really get along very well, so it's not a good idea. It's not that you can't have two wives, it's that they can't get along. God, of course, can handle a lot more than we can. And maybe that's why it's so important that we get along. Otherwise, God has a miserable marriage. But on a deeper sense, God has only one wife. And God has only one mitzvah. Whoa, there's 613 mitzvahs. It's one mitzvah. Do what I need. How many things do I need? What's the difference? You're going to do what I need or not? Are you there for me? Then stop counting. Oh, I did 2 things for you, 10 things for you. So that is a home. A home means you have one home, one family. How many members in that family? The more the merrier. But it's still one family, one home. So in God's perspective, we're all one. His people are just one people. Am echad. So he has only one wife. How many bodies does this one wife have? The more the better. But it's all oneness. If we all saw ourselves as being one project, one purpose, one goal, one direction, then God's marriage will be so much happier. But when we're fragmented, it's like a father whose children can't get along. It's just frustrating, and it's just so distasteful. And that's why what we're talking about, male, female, mashpia, mekabel, giver, receiver, it's such a universal idea. It unites us all. It's cosmic, not just universally human. Everything is male and female. Everything. If you know that male doesn't mean macho and female doesn't mean coquettish. It's a very powerful unifying force.
Yin and yang.
Yin and yang. I'm not complete, and my mission is not complete if you're not included. And you means every other human being in the world. That's the kind of cosmic ideas children teenagers get inspired by. They don't want petty, get a good mark on your card. You come home and they don't like this petty, parochial, tiny life. Everybody wants to feel that they're involved in something cosmic. And it is cosmic. Everything else is commentary.